Welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and for the next hour, we are going to appreciate parents, specifically foster parents, but parents in general. But before you meet my wonderful guests, I would like to take care of a few housekeeping items. I would like to thank the crew for this evening who have volunteered to give up their Wednesday to come hang out at BCAT. Jolie Atwood is here and Colleen Moore, and they are true and faithful volunteers for the organization, so I thank them very much for coming. We also have Chris Flaherty helping us out tonight. Chris is a staff member and makes sure that all of us volunteers know what we're doing. No crashing and burning, so thank you, Chris. And last but definitely not least, we always thank my husband Paul, who is a very good parent himself, for staying home for Daddy Date Night. So thank you, Paul, for staying home. And, I forgot. If you have a question for our wonderful guests this evening, you can always give us a call at 781-270-9199. You can also email me anytime with either a question about tonight's show or suggestions for future topics by emailing talk@bcattv.org. And now, people that I want to appreciate for coming back, we have Bob Costa and Courtney Edge-Mattos. Did I pronounce that right?
Mattos.
Mattos, okay. Sorry, I should have checked. Who are both staff members for JRI, which stands for Justice Resource Institute. Mm-hmm. And you were on my show just a few months ago. So thank you for coming back. I'm glad I didn't scare you away. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this last time, that May, the month of May that we are currently in, is Foster Parent Appreciation Month. Correct?
It is.
It's National Foster Care Month.
Oh, okay.
So
Didn't
we
know
want
that.
to recognize all parts of foster care. So the children that are involved in foster care, their biological parents that are working hard to regain custody of them and gain the supports that they need, the foster parents that are doing this amazing work. And we don't mind if you appreciate staff as well. So
I know, sometimes we forget about that.
Yeah.
So before we really get involved in tonight's topic, can you guys just give us a quick background of where you grew up, how you came to the Boston area, and what made you get involved in the foster care system? You can fight to see who goes first. Rock, paper, scissors.
This time. I think you went first
there
last
you go.
time. So basically, I grew up in located in southeastern Mass, and but my working with foster children and foster parents has been not only in southeastern Mass but throughout Boston and surrounding areas. So that's how I kind of made my way up in the Metro Boston area. Started out as a young man to pay college working in a residential treatment facility, St. Vincent's Home in Fall River, and we used to actually live inside the cottages for a couple of weeks. Yeah, it was. They don't do that anymore.
That's intense.
And then from there, I moved up. I graduated from college, became a case manager for another agency. Okay. From case manager to supervisor, family support worker. And then on to become a program director.
Okay, now do you still work with families at all, or is it more administrative role now?
I like to get my hands dirty, as they say. So if I need to, if I'm forced into action, I will do a home visit. I was just talking to a young teenager who was having a tough time, and I met with his father, and I always like to. It's fun, You always keep yourself active. So
I think also seeing the kids themselves and working with the families kind of justify that you are doing something good.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of times when we see some of the children that come inside the office, it's nice they'll say, "Hey Bob, how's it going?" or "Hi Courtney, how are things?" Even though I might not be going to the home on a weekly basis, when they come in the office, I always make it a point to, "Hey, how's your day been? How's school going?" Just kind of get a little background, especially the teenagers. The teenagers, they can be a handful, but they're moving on in life.
No, not teenagers.
But it's great to hear their perspective.
Sorry, Jolie.
It's great to hear their perspective. And actually, I have a pretty funny story from our foster parent appreciation dinner, because we had one of the teenagers there.
Okay.
She kept calling me out to talk to me. But it's a great story. I think it's a great story. So. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Actually, yeah.
Now I want to hear the story, but you can
I know.
tell us a little
It's
more
hard
about
to
you. And then
follow.
we'll go back in story, and then we can...
There we go.
Okay.
Carry on. So I grew up a little bit everywhere. My family moved around a fair amount. We lived in-
Military?
My parents were military parents, actually. So I think
okay.
moving was just sort of like, well, why wouldn't you move? You know, so we did,
Okay.
which was fine. And when I went to college, I didn't study anything related to human services. I took some psych classes because I
was a
think it
math
was a
major.
requirement. That was about it. But I finished school. I took a job teaching toddlers, which was exciting and funny and different.
Never a dull moment
Never
there.
a dull moment, never at all. And I became very interested in early childhood education and in sort of the building blocks for early childhood. And then I took a job working at a program for teen moms. So
Oh,
teen
wow.
parents who
Okay.
are involved with the Department of Children and Families, learning about parenting, learning about caring for their children, with an ultimate goal of breaking the cycle of foster care.
Okay.
And that was a huge growing experience for me and a huge learning experience. So I kind of graduated through that program.
Didn't scare you away.
No, it really did.
Like, well,
Some
yeah,
days,
it could
there
go
were
either
days.
way.
There were days, but more often than not, you saw these amazing young women, sometimes from very difficult circumstances, kind of finding their footing when they were able to accept nurturance and they were able to just kind of buy into the program.
Okay.
We saw some amazing young mothers and beautiful little families that kind of got their start there. So
cool.
that was a privilege to be a part of. And one of the things that I started to notice was a common denominator in success was
Really?
our girls who had been in foster care,
Okay.
who had foster parents that remained involved, that had been really positive supports in their life, and they could call and say, my baby is doing this, what do I do? You know, they had that connection.
Now, are the teenage foster kids
Yep.
who are also moms still living with the foster families?
No, so they were living in our program. It was a program, an
Okay.
independent living program.
All
They
right.
had little
Sorry, I
apartments
just
that they
got a little
managed.
lost.
Yeah, understandable. But what I noticed when they had those consistently involved former foster parents that
Okay.
just had become part of their lives,
Well, they're parent figures.
right, those girls did really well. And then a position with our program came available to become a home finder, and I said, I want to do that.
Cool.
And so I've been doing that. Yeah, and here I am.
Okay, I do want to know how you find homes, but I'm really curious about the story that he alluded to.
So when we had our foster parent appreciation dinner this past Friday,
Oh, okay.
what we did was we presented our foster parents with JRI foster jackets.
Ooh,
And
cool.
so they were very excited, and one of our teens, a great girl who's been through a lot of adversity, but very resilient, and has been with us for approximately 4 to 5, I think, 5 years she had.
It's just under 5. That was my first home that I opened and the
Okay.
first kid that I did an intake for.
Wow.
Yep.
So she's a great teen, and again, it's that relationship. So she knows us from the office, and she would talk to me. So she kept calling me, because we had 2 rooms because we did babysitting for our foster parents. So
okay.
we had a room next door. So we, we were acknowledging our foster.
So you got to be a babysitter.
Yes, we did. We had 50 teenagers and babies and
Yep.
young children in a
Wow.
room with a bunch of activities going
Yes.
on next door to the foster parent appreciation dinner, which
Organized
was kinda-
chaos,
Absolutely.
hey.
Yes.
Which gave our foster parents, 2
A night
hours of, just being
Yeah.
adult talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I kept seeing in the corner of my eye this young lady just kind of motioning to me like, Bob, I need to talk to you. So I
you're
got
like,
up and I went to talk to
okay.
her, and she's like, I'd love to have one of those jackets. And I said, well, it's really for the foster parents, It's a tribute. It's a thank you for all the hard work that they've done. She goes, but I've been in the program for about 4.5 years. I deserve a jacket.
Deserve a jacket.
So I got her a jacket. So
You did?
I did.
That's
get her a
awesome.
jacket. So
Excellent.
she's wearing it proudly. So I thought it was just a great line.
Yeah.
The way she said it was just in a very serious tone. And I said, you made your point. So she did get a jacket.
My kids are learning how to, persuasive writing. I think
Yes.
that, that
Negotiation
one.
skills.
And she is quite a negotiator, but it just.
Now, did
again,
you have extra jackets to like give her that
Yeah,
night?
we
or?
did.
Okay.
We did. She figured it out. So, and then her partner, as I say, I call him a partner, another young lady.
Partner in crime.
Yes, partner in crime. She was calling me over as well.
She wants a jacket.
So
But
she
she
got
got
one
one.
as well. So, yeah, teens are resilient. That's for sure.
There you go. And they deserve jackets.
Yes, and they wear them proudly. So.
Okay, so how do you find foster parents or foster families? I mean, I can't imagine it being cold calls.
Right. No, it's not. We've tried all different kinds of methods.
Okay.
When I first started, I think our primary method was just hanging up flyers that had those little tear-off
Okay.
pieces, and that wasn't very effective. Because when you're thinking about, shopping for your groceries, you're probably not thinking about
Foster parents.
foster parenting.
Yeah.
We have tried tabling, so sitting at tables at libraries and
okay.
community events, and sometimes we would get a bit of a response with that. So, but not too much.
Okay.
So you're putting in a lot of time for very little return.
Yeah.
It's social media right now. And word of mouth. So word of mouth is actually the best thing. So for our foster parents who are living this and doing this, their friends, family members, members of community groups that they belong to will see them with their kids and go, oh, that kind of looks like something I would be interested in doing. So that's definitely the best way to get really great foster parents, because they kind of know what they're getting into. But social media is the other method. So we have an active Facebook page, we have Twitter.
Which I have since liked,
Yay,
so I
thank
get all
you.
these. It's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to reach people. We can reach sort of a broad range of people. And we've found some wonderful folks through Facebook.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yay. And you were also telling me earlier that primarily you were South Shore, but you're starting to branch north.
We're creeping up, yes.
Yay.
So
Yeah, what we're finding is a lot of the referrals that we're receiving from DCF for placements for children looking for homes. A lot is coming from the Worcester, Lawrence, Salem area.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is to identify homes and be able to open up appropriate homes so we can place those children that are waiting to be placed in foster care. And again, the goal is to be able to open quality homes and to be able to meet the need. Because if a child has no place to go, they're usually in a shelter waiting to go, or maybe going from home to home waiting for a bed to open.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, that happens. And I think that, so our goal is to be able to open up more homes so that does not happen.
yeah.
Now, do you also try to keep a child geographically located in the same
We do our best.
environment?
So we were getting calls from Lowell, Lynn, Lawrence, lots of L's.
I was going to say, lots of L's. I always thought, Massachusetts was
L's.
more the M and W's, but now you're pointing out.
Well, Methuen was, many towns that are in sort of the northern area, and they were calling us just because there's a lack of homes. So saying, hey, do you have anything in the Taunton area? Do you have anything in the Brockton area? But that's a lot of traveling for kids, and usually they have weekly visits with their family at the DCF office. So then you've got to ask a foster parent to transport a child from Taunton to Lowell once a week for an unknown period of time. That's a lot.
That is a
That's
lot.
a lot of time for that kid to be in the car.
Right. And depending on the time of day.
The time of
that you
day
go.
and the
I mean, that
traffic,
could
all
be-
that. So
yeah.
we said, let's start opening homes in the northern area. There's obviously a need here.
So how do you do that? I mean, you mentioned social media being your primary focus, but social media is everywhere.
Social media can be targeted, so so we choose
I'm technically
geographical.
inept, so just
So we choose geographic regions and keywords that might help us locate people in given areas. And then we've opened up a home in Wilmington. We've opened up a home in Lowell. So
And when you
those-
say opened up a home, that's just like
So that is
a
a home-
family.
a
It's
family,
not like
yep.
a group home or anything.
It's
like
a family that's been through the full licensing process, has been approved, on every level, meets all of the necessary criteria, and both of them have children at this point,
Yes, they do.
placed through foster care.
Oh, wow.
So they are actively providing foster care at this point, which is pretty great.
Yay.
Yes, and
So-
they're wonderful.
Okay, let's talk about the process. Okay, so let's say I call your office and say, I want to be a foster parent. Then what happens?
So you would get myself or my colleague Jared,
Okay.
and we do a screening questionnaire. So
Okay.
just to make sure you meet some of the basic qualifications. So I want to know who lives in your home with you.
Okay.
You can own a home, you can be renting a home. That is not a criteria that we
okay.
worry about, but how many folks live in your home?
Okay.
We have a state regulation that we have to comply with because we're considered intensive foster care.
Okay.
Or some people call it therapeutic, comprehensive, different words, but intensive
okay.
foster care.
Okay.
You can only have a maximum of 4 children under the age of 18 living in the home at a time.
Okay.
So that would include foster children. So I
Got
always
it.
ask, who's in your home? If you have 4 or more children under the age of 18, you don't meet criteria and we wouldn't be able to move forward.
Okay.
For our program, we require that you have an available bedroom. We don't permit our children to share bedrooms.
Okay.
And we do that for their own sense of safety. They've
Okay.
had some really unkind things that have been done to them, and a bedroom is a very vulnerable place. So sharing a bedroom with a stranger could be scary.
Okay. Now, are there exceptions to that rule? Like if
Very
siblings, like a brother and 2 brothers, need a foster home in order, if it's a question of keeping the brothers together or separating them, would you allow them to share a room?
Yeah, we would look at the situation. Like we would
I
look
mean,
at
yeah,
the we would look at
Right.
the
I'm not
referral.
trying to do an umbrella,
Yeah,
but
no, that's fine.
No, we would
there
look at,
could be exceptions.
Right,
Yep.
we would look at the referral. We would talk to the area office. We'd see if if there's any concern. We'd look at the age of the child. I mean, there are certain regulations regarding that as well. Because if you have a opposite sex, you can't have it's age 8, so you couldn't have a boy and a girl rooming
Okay.
together up to you can do it under 8, but not 8. That's
After
it.
8,
After
yeah.
8.
Because I'm
that's
also
it.
thinking if siblings were being removed from their home for whatever reason,
Yep.
that might be kind of scary, and sharing a room might have like that safety as well.
It
so
might. So there are some exceptions that we make to
You
that
do take that
rule.
into consideration.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure,
Yep.
for
All right.
sure.
Okay, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No,
Keep going.
ask as many questions as you want. Folks
What about
have to have.
pets?
We ask about pets. So we
Okay.
ask what kind of pets you have, and
Okay.
we've gotten some very unusual answers with that,
No,
I have a
we
pet.
still-
which is fine.
What was it?
We have.
So we talk about safety with those pets. A Chihuahua can be just as dangerous as a German
Doberman,
Shepherd,
yeah.
depending upon the animal. But there are 3 breeds that we aren't allowed to place children. I think it's under the age of 12
yep.
with. So if you have a pit bull, a German Shepherd, or a Rottweiler dog, we can't place children under 12. So if somebody calls me and says, I want to be a baby, foster parent, and just foster infants, that's wonderful. And then if they tell me, and I have a pit bull, I have to say no
And
thank
I breed
you.
pit bulls.
Right, then unfortunately we can't, and that's a state regulation we have to comply
Oh,
with.
okay.
So we do talk about pets, we talk about jobs and income, because we need to make sure that people have an income that is supporting their current needs. So if you have 4 members of your family, does your current income support all 4 members of your family? People are compensated through a stipend for foster care, but that money is to go to support the
That
needs
child.
of that child. Right,
Okay.
it's not a job.
Right.
So we're careful about screening for that. We talk about guns and if they have weapons in their home and how those are locked up and made safe.
Okay.
And let me think, what other things do we talk about?
We look at pool safety.
We talk
and,
about, we don't talk
yeah.
about that too much at the
Yeah.
initial screening, but, so we talk about just sort of some basic things and
Okay.
understanding, is the home functioning safely and comfortably at this time? And if you meet those criteria, then we send you an application. We also explain
Okay.
our program, and some folks go, I don't want to be that involved. That's not what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And so then they might self-select out at that point as
Okay.
well. But if it goes well, we send you an application. and CORI forms, so that's the criminal background check in Massachusetts. We have the highest level of clearance, so we see expunged records, we see juvenile records, we see charges that were dismissed, we see everything, which is good because we're considering placing our most vulnerable population with a person. So we really want to understand that. And we get CORIs for people ages 15 and up in the household. So it's really not just the parents, it's everybody in the household. So that comes back, we run the CORIs, then we come out to your home and we do a physical standards inspection. You said you had a bedroom, does it actually exist, right? Are you considering a walk-in closet a bedroom? We don't consider a walk-in closet a bedroom, right? So it has to meet certain criteria. Does the home have heat? Does it have hot water? Does it have electricity? Is it in...
It's kind of scary that you actually have to ask that.
But you'd be surprised. So I mean, I literally turn on faucets.
Wow.
We also make sure that the temperature, some people like real hot showers, right? If you're a real hot shower person, that's great. But we have temperatures that we need things to comply with. So if it comes out scalding, we wouldn't want a toddler to go over there and scald themselves, right? So we talk about that sort of thing. Working smoke detectors, working carbon monoxide detectors, and is the home in generally safe and appropriate condition? So it's fairly standard stuff, but stuff that we want to make sure is in place.
Now, are you the person that actually does
Yep,
the inspection?
I have a checklist and check we go.
I wasn't sure if like,
Yep.
Wasn't sure if there were like inspectors.
No,
or
I have a
something.
tape measure, which makes me feel very official. So
Absolutely.
So we do that. Once that's done, if everything goes, and usually at that visit, I sit down with folks and I answer their questions. Because generally, when people come to us for foster care, they've been thinking about this often for years. They've been considering it. And
Well,
maybe
because it's a pretty serious.
it's huge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a snap decision or like an impulse purchase.
And you
know?
can't exactly change your mind.
Yeah. Well,
Like-
you can. You
Well,
surely
no, but
can,
I mean, like, you know,
Right.
2 a.m. You get a kid. No,
Right.
I don't think I want to do this.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Oh, I forgot diapers are unpleasant. I'm not doing this. Right. That's
Exactly.
Not, yeah, that's not the call we want. So I sit down and I answer any questions that they have. And if all of that goes well, then we invite them to MAP class, which is the Massachusetts Approach to Partnerships in Parenting. Every state has some variation of it. Ours is just called MAP.
Was this like an ongoing class?
We
or-
schedule it a few times a year. We probably host it
Okay.
4 times a year, I would say.
Okay.
And it's a 30-hour course.
Wow.
Yep. So,
Okay.
but you're making a big commitment, so we want you to be prepared.
Exactly.
So
and you want to know what you want them to know what they're really getting
Right.
into.
Absolutely.
exactly. We have some people that begin MAP, and we don't see them after the first day because they go, "This is not for me."
Yeah, I don't think so.
But that's okay. That's fine. We want you to really critically think about this. But MAP class goes over 10 different modules that were created by the Department of Children and Families. Things like, what is the Department of Children and Families and how does it work? How do the courts play into the child welfare system?
Okay.
What are some of the reasons that children come into care and are unable to live with their birth families? What are some of the challenges that the birth families are going through? And how does Department of Children and Families help them through that? What are some of the behaviors that we see in kids who have experienced trauma and are going through grief and loss and all the feelings they experience when they come into foster care? And how do we help them through those issues and feelings? What are some of the resources that are available? And what are sort of the real responsibilities that foster parents are signing on to complete? You know, because we want them to be very clear in what those tasks are. And the whole thing kind of culminates in what we call panel day. So we bring in real live experienced foster parents and adoptive parents, and the people in MAP class get to ask them questions. So it's not just a teacher telling them stuff, it is people who
People
are
from
really
the front
living the
lines,
life,
yeah.
right, the
Okay.
boots on the ground folks
Okay.
who are telling them what it's like to be a foster parent.
Now, when somebody eventually, we'll get to what happens after, but
Sure.
when somebody finally does decide to be a foster parent, because they have to go through this 30-hour course and you have to do a site visit and the application process, is there like you have to do this for at least a year, or is there like a minimum, you have to do it for 5 years, or
Like when you, okay, you're signing on to be
You're
a foster
signing on
parent.
to be a
you have
foster parent.
No.
okay,
No. There's no minimum commitment.
okay,
We certainly want people to feel like they can at least commit to the duration of that first child's placement.
okay,
And then maybe at the end of that, they go, you know what, this was not for me.
okay.
And we've had folks do that,
Yeah.
Great people, and they just determine that it's not the right fit for their life or where they are currently.
What we try to do as well is to be able to, depending on the family, if they are looking to just to do maybe a weekend respite, just to get get a feel as to
Okay.
what it's like, we'll suggest that. We've had some families just say, "Yep, I'm ready to go," and they'll come in and
Wow.
they'll read a file, and we'll talk about the potential child going into their home, and they're in all in board. So
Yeah.
it all depends on the family, and I think that when a lot of those questions come up in MAP, and I think that Courtney and Jared really will respond to those questions. And if there's a concern, then we'll look at maybe the respite route. Hey,
Yeah.
try this for a day, or because a lot of times some foster parents might need a little bit of a break, or they might have a health issue going on, so we might need to be able to place somebody in maybe just on a weekend. So
Yeah.
it works out nicely.
Cool.
So.
I think that's a really good method for families that are interested in getting into this. So they may have younger children
Who don't like to share.
who don't like to share, exactly, and they go, well, what is this going to be like, you know?
Right, okay.
So if you start out as a respite parent, you kind of get to slowly integrate into that environment and support your own children through that, because it's a whole family effort.
Now, is there a difference between families who just want to foster and families who want to foster and eventually adopt?
Yes and no.
Okay.
How's that for clear, right?
Clear as mud. Love it.
So
Well, whether or not, either the training or when
Yep.
you go to place a child,
Right.
decide. So I will let you talk.
yeah.
You just did. We just you just had one done. So
Yeah.
I mean, the training is the same.
It
So
is.
Okay.
that's the best way to think of it. So if you're fostering to adopt, the training is the same. You'll go through MAP. We'll go through the same process that Courtney just described. Then at that point, when the home, and jump in if I'm making any mistakes on
You're
it,
good.
but as the home progresses and is approved and licensed, then at that point, then the adoption, there might be children that are on the adoption track for DCF, and then you'll try to be able to match that child to the home.
Yeah.
But then it's a process. It's a process between our agency and DCF. So Courtney just actually went through this a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
With a family, and she had opened the family, and the family, and it was a search for a child that they were interested in adopting, possibly, and the referral came in. It was a lot of work that Courtney had done with the department, and at this point right now, the child was placed, but the adoption process does not take place just yet.
Right.
There's a time frame that that has to happen first. So.
Yeah. So they're fostering to adopt. So right now they really are foster parents in every sense of the word. So they know that their end goal is adoption. So we've matched them with children who likely will be adopted.
Likely. Okay.
Right.
So there's no guarantee.
There's not a guarantee in this case. So the children's, it's called parental rights. A judge has not terminated the parental rights. So those children can't be adopted because they still legally belong to their parents in spite of the fact that they're not in their physical custody.
Got it.
The parents are experiencing some pretty significant challenges, and they're challenges that have been going on for longer than these kids have been alive. So there's not a great sense that they're probably going to overcome these challenges and be able to parent their children. So it's likely that their parental rights will be terminated, and then these children will be able to be adopted by this family.
Okay.
The family understands that if the parents get well, which you never hope against parents getting well, right? Like that would
you gotta
always
be
be
torn. I mean, I
right.
really,
it's tough
this
because
kid really, I
this
want
child
this.
who you love, you absolutely love that person.
Yes.
but wouldn't you love to give them the biggest gift of all, which would be healthy parents, you know? So they recognize that there's a risk that they're accepting, that these children could return to their parents. So I mean, that's a big risk to sign on for. It's not for
Yeah.
everybody. And I think some folks go, oh, yeah, I could do that. But they're
I
thinking, but it would never happen to me. That would
Oh, of
never
course
happen to
not.
me,
Of course
right?
not.
But you have to really accept and understand that that risk is real and alive and it could happen with the bang of a judge's gavel.
Right, and the
So-
judge has to be objective, so there isn't the warm, fuzzy feelings that the
Right.
judge, it's like,
Yep.
no, sorry, it's,
Right, this is the law.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it. These are the facts of the case, and this is my determination.
okay.
And sometimes parents are jarred, you know, who have lost their children temporarily. They're jarred to, you know, when it's a court situation to let's get on board here, you know, and they're healing and they make their family whole again. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that foster care does with our foster parents is to be able to, when we get a child in, if the goal is reunification, we're going to get the foster family, the foster parents to work with that birth family and get that child home. That's the goal. Let's get the
Yeah.
child home. Let's get the family healed.
Okay.
Let's stabilize the child. Let's get them whatever they need, any medical or, you know, dental, whatever work that needs to be done. Let's
Okay.
get some family work going, and then let's get that child back home to where they belong. They belong home with mom and dad, if it's appropriate, obviously. So.
Now, as you guys were talking, I haven't even like looked at these, but a lot of, I'm making some assumptions here, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just picturing a lot of these kids have probably been through some kind of trauma. And yes, you mentioned that are resilient, but they do come with baggage, and kids can't always articulate what's going on. So I'm wondering if there are the resources available to help them emotionally and psychologically, and I'm also wondering, what about kids that might have some kind of special need to begin with? How do they get in the mix, and how do the foster parents help them out? I'm sure it's two separate questions, but
Well, I think that with foster parents, there's a lot of training that take place for foster parents. So
Okay.
they understand that the children that are referred to us by DCF have some type of trauma. And you know, we get assessments from the department, so we
Okay.
can kind of take a look at the history and see exactly what's happening. And then at that point, when a child's intake, we will look to see, does that child need a therapist? So we'll make sure that a therapist is located. Does the child need a psychiatrist? We'll make sure that a child is referred for a psychiatrist.
Okay.
We'll make sure that any medical needs are met. You know, does a child have hearing loss? Does a child need to, to see an eye doctor? We'll make sure that that takes place.
'cause I'm also thinking, just like in the schools,
Yep.
I've had friends who have had to fight for IEPs for
Yep.
their kids, and I'm
Yeah.
just like,
The same thing with if a child is in the need for IEP. Individual education plan, or if they
Okay.
need special services in school, we are there to support the child. We have, JRI has their own educational advocate, so they can give us assistance and guidance for that,
Okay.
and we can work in partnership with the schools to make sure that that child gets what they need.
because I mean, sometimes anxiety and ADHD show the same symptoms. So is this kid just
Absolutely.
distracted, or is this kid,
Right.
anxious? And how do we get?
And this is where the foster parent plays a critical role, though. They're in the home on a daily basis, and we have case managers that visit on a weekly basis. But it's those reports from the foster parent that say, hey, I've noticed that this child has a difficult time sleeping at night, or this child won't shower, or this child is distracted very easily. So we're able to kind of piece a puzzle together and be able to report back to DCF, or be able to report to the therapist or the psychiatrist. This is what we're seeing, in the home. Child might be afraid to go out, and be with other members of the community. That happens sometimes, and we'll say, oh, what might have happened, and we'll try to figure it out. So the foster parent plays a critical role in getting that information. Particularly if a child was removed in an emergency basis. A lot of times the department won't know it was an emergency.
Yeah.
They got a call in the middle of the night. something bad happened in the home, the department goes out, they have to remove a child for safety reasons, and then they might, until they can kind of figure out what's going on with the family, they'll make a referral and we'll place the child, and then we're going to learn what's going on with the child. We'll see by day to day what's happening.
Oh, okay.
So it can get intense. It can get intense, but that's where a foster parent is so critical, though, and that's why there's all the training that a foster parent goes through.
Yeah. There's a lot of paperwork that they complete as well. So we have our foster parents complete weekly observation logs on each child.
Okay.
So that helps us show patterns of behavior. It helps us show if you've started with an intervention for something. So maybe they've started on a new medication. Maybe they've started meeting with a therapeutic mentor. You can see if that's working, right? So are we seeing an improvement? Are we seeing that whatever we're doing is supportive for this child? Maybe adjusting the bedtime routine, or the wake-up routine. So
Routine.
Coming
up with a routine.
Very
Absolutely.
big, very important. So I think all of that information, the foster parents are really the gatekeepers of that information. So we lean heavily upon them.
Okay. What about kids with special needs?
Yep. We have them.
Okay.
Absolutely. Sometimes we know, and sometimes a child comes in with sort of a care plan in place and comes in with a diagnosis, and sometimes we really don't know. And so it's, again, that observation and collaborative approach, working with pediatricians, advocating for kids to be seen by specialists. We've had genetic testing done for some kids because we haven't been able to identify what's happened. We've had young children who have had significant head traumas. So they've had a traumatic brain injury.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, huge. And then working with neurologists to understand how does that impact their daily functioning? How does that impact the way that they learn?
Okay.
And how do we learn how they learn so we can help them, right? So it's a lot of research and collaboration.
We talked a little bit earlier about, the foster to adopt type thing. That kind of made me think of my next question, but also just in general, how often and what are the criteria for foster families to request, I only want girls, or I only want infants, or I'll take
100%.
anybody except for teenagers, or are there some that just say, give me anybody?
We have the whole mix. So we have some foster parents that are very specific. They only want infants. And for our agency, at any rate, daycare is not provided for foster parents.
Okay.
So that would either have to be an out-of-pocket expense for them, which is huge for infants.
Well, huge for anybody, yeah.
And most of the infants that we get, I would say, are withdrawing from substances. So they were exposed to substances in utero, and when they arrive at our foster parents' home, they've typically been detoxing in the hospital and are still experiencing withdrawals in the foster home.
Okay.
So those foster homes are very specialized. They really are prepared to deal with that specialty. So we actually love when we have parents that have that kind of specialization. We've found the same thing with parents who have maybe worked with an autistic child before, a child diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And they might say, this is my area of expertise. I can serve this population. And so we're going to lean on them to serve that population. And we have other parents that just say, what do you have? Let's see if it works. I'm going to do my best.
Wow, okay, that's brave.
But they do really have complete control. Whatever we know about the child, they learn. So we invite them to come in and read the file.
Yeah.
Some files are huge. Some are,
2 pages.
Here's the file.
right. It is a girl. Her name is Rebecca, and she is 7, and that's all that we know. And she's from, this office. That might be everything that we know, but the foster parent determines, do I feel like I'm the right fit for this child?
Okay.
And what's interesting, I'm sorry, and so what's interesting too sometimes is that a foster parent might think that there's a particular age group that they might want to work with.
Okay.
And then once they experience that age group, they might try a different age group.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It is, as Courtney said, it's wide open.
Yeah.
So.
And we've had foster parents kind of change their demographics over time. So as their kids get older, they might choose to parent kids that are older. Or they might choose to parent kids that are younger. You know, sometimes they swing in the opposite direction and go, I miss having a little guy around the house, you know, so let's get a little guy back in the mix.
I don't miss that.
So it's kind of fun to see the parents develop and the families kind of transform over time.
Okay, now with this, with the parent that says, let's see what happens
Yep.
and see if it's a good fit. What if it's not a good fit? It's got to happen, maybe not frequently, but I'm sure it's happened at least
happens.
once in your career. What happens in a case like that?
Well,
Do you want to move the kid again, or do you want to work it out, or?
Yeah, that's.
I think we make every effort to work it out.
You make it, so when we do the matching process, we will try to match the child to the foster parent, and we'll have that foster parent come in and read the file if we have that information. And then if it's not working out, we'll try to put any support we can think of inside the home.
Okay.
So if a foster parent maybe needs respite to get a break,
Yeah.
Okay.
we'll provide a respite. If a foster parent might, if a child might need additional testing, we'll try to figure out additional testing. We'll consult with a psychologist. We have a psychologist who visits our office on a monthly basis. We'll present the case to the psychologist to get some ideas as well. Is there something that we're missing? Is there something that we can implement to help the foster parent out? And then you know, we will do everything in our power to maintain the placement.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there are times when when it's just not a good match.
Yeah.
That child might be triggered. It could be triggered by a number of different things.
Yeah.
It could be triggered by the looks of the foster parent. It could
Yeah.
be triggered by the home environment. We don't know. But we'll do everything we can to maintain the placement. And at that point, we'll look to identify another home within the same geographic region,
Okay.
within the same school system. We'll do everything that we can to
Yeah.
maintain, as much as we can, to maintain the consistency for the child.
Sometimes through that wrong placement, you learn things about the child,
Okay.
and that kind of enables you to make the right placement. So we realize that their abuser may have been a male, so placing this child in a home with a male is very triggering for them, and that's ultimately why it's not working. But they respond really well to females, so we might place them in an older female foster parent's home that they sort of identify as a safer person. So unfortunately, it does happen, but we try to make it work. And our foster parents are amazing at trying to make it work too. They are, the things that they have tried amaze
Wow.
me. They just do. We have.
I can't imagine there being like a Pinterest site of how to, you know.
There
but-
probably are,
There probably-
because it's Pinterest.
I know.
But so I have one story that is so precious to me. We had a foster parent, and she is our oldest foster parent. She is like the grandma to every child in the program. Now she's just doing respite.
Okay.
But she had been taking full-time kids for until a few years ago.
Wow. Okay.
And she had this little girl who moved in. She had experienced a lot of neglect, very significant neglect. She was very small in stature. She was very petite, and very whiny. God love her, but she was whiny. She really was, and would cry at the drop of a hat. A very emotional child, and our foster parent was so sensitive to her and so kind, and so she just kind of thought about this little girl, and I think she was 6 or 7, but very infantile. Not just juvenile, but really truly infantile.
Okay.
And so our foster parent kind of thought and said, this girl wasn't nurtured right from the womb.
Okay.
And so she needs that baby nurturing. And so she would get up, and the girl ate like a little bird, like she just didn't eat much.
Okay.
But neither do babies. Babies eat a few ounces at a time, but
They graze.
often.
Yeah.
They often, right? So that's what she started to do. She would give her like a little milk and a little cracker. Here you go. And then 2 hours later, I'm going to give you a little something else. And did that round the clock, just like you would for a baby.
Wow.
So setting her alarm, getting up, I'm going to get up at 12, you know, because she's fussing at 12, so I'm going to get her a little something at 12.
Okay.
She's fussing at 3, I'm going to get her a little something at 3, right? And then they were able to space that out. And then they spaced it out a little bit longer. And
Wow.
it's, I mean, that's not something that you often think about. You're not going to
Yeah.
read about that in a book,
No.
right? That's not on a Pinterest board. But it's the dedication of our foster parents who go, you're not a bad child, you're a hurting child, and I need to figure out what you need, and then I'm going to give that to you, you know? And it's just amazing what happens when they do that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I love happy
I
stories.
know.
Love happy stories.
That one makes me happy. I like that one.
Gee, so back to my notes. How much lead time does a foster family get before being placed with a child? Is it always like the middle of the night phone call, or sometimes is it in 3 days, or?
We try to be very planful. Foster parents who we consider veterans who have been through this before, we will lean on them to take the emergencies. So
Okay.
the emergency might be a call from the department at 4:49 on a Friday afternoon saying we need placement this weekend, please.
Okay.
And we will lean on a foster parent that understands the system,
But,
understands.
I mean, how frequently are these emergencies? Is it always putting out
It's-
fires, or is it like?
It all depends. A lot of times we see a spike in emergencies around the holiday times,
Okay.
particularly
4:59 on a Friday afternoon. No.
usually, yep. We'll see a spike happening usually at the end of the school year, and also at the beginning of the school year,
Okay.
because there's children are transitioning back home maybe, from different
okay.
residential placements possibly. Reports are coming in, that things aren't going well. It all depends.
Okay.
But any given week, we could get 2 or 3 a day, and
Yeah.
it could be coming from any part of the state. So
Okay. But are there some times where you'll know, okay, tomorrow I need to place,
Yep.
or?
It could be weeks.
Yeah.
It,
It
could
could be
be
weeks.
absolutely weeks,
Okay,
for sure.
so that is an
Right.
option. I'm
Yep.
sure it doesn't happen frequently, but
Well, we
Yeah.
have, for instance, as an example, we have been working with the department on a young adult that's coming back. So we've been working on that for 2 weeks now, and
Okay.
so the foster parent has been aware of it for 2 weeks. The foster parent knows the history of the young adult. The foster parent knows the young adult because the young adult was in care before, and we'll do the intake. We'll do an intake tomorrow morning. So
Yeah.
we are ready to go. So that
Yeah.
foster parent knows it's happening. We have a plan in place. The department is ready, and it'll happen.
Yeah.
yes.
Those are the good ones.
Yeah. We have another foster parent who is doing visits right now. So she's kind of building the rapport with this child who's placed in a.
What kind of visits?
She's doing right now just day visits.
Okay.
So,
So the
initially
child
she
is
met
coming
the child.
to visit with the foster
First she met
parent.
the child.
Okay.
She went to the child, to the program where the child's currently living.
Okay.
And this is a child that needs a gradual transition. So
Okay.
it's working with the program, working with the Department of Children and Families, and our team working to help this child feel safe. So
Now,
I
is
think
the
it
child
was.
still with his or her birth families, or
Nope,
is there
she's
there is
living
another?
she's living in a children's program.
Okay.
Where she's getting a lot of structure, which she needs
Okay.
right now, but she's ready to step down from that structure into
Got
a
it.
home environment.
Okay.
So I
I'm
think
sorry to be clueless. I'm just
No.
unaware of all this,
ask away, absolutely.
which is why you're here.
There you go. So I think it was either Monday or yesterday, she did her first visit at the foster family's house. And so she got to see what her room is going to be. She got to meet, the foster family, the other child that's placed in the home. So she kind of got to integrate in. I think they had dinner together, and then they brought her back to her program.
Okay.
This weekend, I think she's going to do a full day visit. So she'll spend the whole day with them and get a better sense of it. So it's that gradual transition. Sometimes we plan for a much longer transition, and we determine that that's actually anxiety producing for the child.
Okay.
Like, what if they don't take me and I end up staying here? Some of our kids, especially the younger ones, have like a tricky sense of time, right?
Okay.
So you
They have
can
no
tell
sense of
them
time.
2 weeks, but they're like, is 2 weeks now? Is it,
Yeah.
I don't know what
Is it
that
2 weeks
means.
yet?
Right, exactly. So we might speed up a transition.
Okay.
Or we might find that the child really needs to develop a little more rapport and take some
Okay.
more time. So there can be flexibility with that.
How much say does a child get as far as placement, especially like teenagers? Can they like do some kind of visitation like that and say, I'm not comfortable with that situation, or?
We've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I think particularly the teenagers, because they want to know where they're going to live. The big thing with a teenager is geographic region. So if you have a teenager that has friends in the community and they're being asked to move communities, that's a tough thing.
Yeah.
So what we'll always try to do is keep that teen, if we get a referral, keep that teen in the geographic region.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, because again, foster homes are,
Right.
they're in short supply, and that's one of the reasons why we're here, is to be able to, to get additional interest. But a teen, try as much as we can to try to give them a voice. It's important, because if they feel that they don't have a voice, then the placement won't work,
Okay.
But a lot of times, teens are very resilient, and then they get it a lot of times. Like, my alternative is to stay where I am now.
Okay.
Maybe I can make some new friends in the community, and we'll try to get them to visit the foster parent and say, hey, this is where this is the community that you'd live in. So that's the best case scenario. But teens are I find them extremely resilient.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking, a teenager might just feel stuck in the system and
Oh,
out of
absolutely.
control. So giving them that sense of control
Yeah.
could potentially lead to a better success rate.
You want them to be part of the process,
Okay.
though. I mean, I've worked with teens for a long time, and I think that the outcomes are more positive when you have a dialogue with them and not say to them, I'm running the show. It's not about that. It's about that conversation with the teen, getting them to be part of the process and listening to what they might have to say. They might not, they're going to tell you. They will tell you, no,
They'll
I'm
tell
not
you.
comfortable in this home, or, or they're really, really good.
I deserve the jacket.
Yes, exactly. But they have a voice, and if you listen to them and you have a dialogue with them, most of the time they're very understanding. So
Okay.
Yeah.
No, we only have like about 5 minutes left.
Oh, wow.
But I know that you have some happy little scenarios that you
Yes.
wanted to share. So let's share some scenarios.
Absolutely. So in our foster
Happy
parent,
endings.
Yes. So in
Or
our
happy
foster,
middles or whatever.
in our foster parent appreciation dinner, we had asked our case managers to come up with some positive things that have happened over the years that our foster parents have done with our children.
Accomplished.
But I think it also represents not only what our foster parents at JRI do, but throughout the country and throughout the Commonwealth. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's important, because foster parents are special people, and they do a lot of positive things. So one of the things that was mentioned is that we had a foster parent went above and beyond to ensure a biological mother of the siblings in her care have been part of many family events. Most recently, the foster parent invited the siblings' biological mother to an Easter service, which was such a positive experience for the mother, and encouraged her to begin attending services on a regular basis.
Wow.
Another foster parent brought a child to California for the first time ever.
Holy crow.
Yep. The child reported this was the first time she was on an airplane.
Wow.
She was able to go to Disneyland, the Wax Museum, and was able to sightsee. The
Wow.
foster parent also took the child shopping on Black Friday shopping on a Friday, which we take
I won't
for
even do that.
Yeah, we take for granted sometimes, but she had never done that before. I thought that was such a great experience. Foster parent also let her redecorate her entire room and helped her paint it to make her own. So that's what's
Wow.
part of that process of having the child feel part of the family. Another one, a brand new foster parent welcomed the foster child's biological sister into her home. So this was a situation where the sister was not living in the home,
Okay.
but in order to make it work, they invited the biological sister into the home for dinner on a regular basis. They planned a vacation for her and her foster child to Myrtle Beach after having a rough couple of months. Foster parents surprised foster child with front row seats to Disney on Ice.
Wow.
And then
That is dedication.
It's unbelievable. And the last one that I'll share is, a lot of our families do a lot of work with siblings and the
Okay.
families. So there have been many families that have taken on the challenge of sibling groups of 3, which is a lot,
Yeah.
and have done a tremendous job working with these children and keeping the youngsters together. We also have families that have siblings in separate homes, and that happens occasionally.
Okay.
And foster parents are working collaboratively to get the siblings to see each other more often. So again,
Oh,
that
okay, like a
keeping
play
that process
date,
going.
you know.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
And one of the themes, if I may,
Absolutely.
one of the themes that we did have for our appreciation dinners was you are worth more than gold. And this was a tribute that we had penned for our foster parents, if I can just mention what we did. It said, over the centuries, gold has been equated with wealth and power, Fort Knox, the settling of California, but those in foster care understand that a foster parent's weight in gold is much more. It's the ability to work with a child or siblings who have endured trauma at an early age that most adults would never experience. It's the ability to live in a fishbowl when the daily ebbs and flows of life are scrutinized and at times criticized. It's the ability to accompany a child to a home visit with a birth parent and then soothe the youngster when they cannot understand why they have to leave mommy or daddy. Foster parents are worth more than gold because you cannot put a price on compassion, love, endurance, patience, and resilience. Oftentimes, members of the community will ask us, what do foster parents do? I can explain the role of a foster parent like we've done tonight,
Right.
but the real reason lies somewhere else. The answer, I believe, lies in this quote from Simon Sinek, a British author and motivational speaker. It is not what you do, but why you do it. It comes from your soul and your heart. Gold has no heart, and it has no soul.
Wow.
So that's what
That's-
foster parents do.
Oh, is that all? Wow. I mean, it really takes a special person to like be dedicated. And like you said, this older woman who's been doing it for years, and it's got to be emotionally draining. I mean, even your jobs have to be emotionally draining, seeing the kids in these situations.
But we get the front row seat for the best stuff too.
Yes.
We really do. Like it was this morning.
You
were
have a
having-
treasure chest of gold.
This morning, we had a knock on our door, or a ring of our doorbell technically, but we had an arrival. It was during our staff meeting, and it was one of the children that I placed in an adoptive home 2 years ago.
Wow.
And she and her mom came by to drop off a bag of hair bows that they made for our little girls, so that our little girls will feel pretty.
Oh, wow.
And it was seeing this child that was born very unhealthy. And to be honest, nobody quite knew how things were going to go for her. And she was smiling and telling me about making the bows with her mom, and it's seeing the growth that happens. And that just lights the fire every day.
does.
You know, it just,
This is why
for
I'm
foster
doing
parents,
it.
for our staff members, for everybody that's connected to us, that keeps us going.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you for having us again. We
And
appreciate it.
I love happy stories and happy endings and everything. So thank you very much for coming. And I also want to thank everyone at home for tuning in this evening. Hope you found our conversation as warm and fuzzy as I did. So thank you very much. Enjoy this great weather, and I will see you around town. Good night.